Hello again, and welcome to Denton's Tales. Now this time I'd like to say something about astrology. Yes, astrology, the science, or pseudoscience as many would call it. Scientists, not usually being even remotely open-minded. If you can't take it into a lab and analyze it, well, it don't exist. Astrology is the study of heavenly bodies, the stars and the planets, the constellations, and their actual physical or emotional effect on us. It is a very ancient practice, of course. It dates back many thousands of years, and that is one reason why it is dismissed by many people as questionable at the best and totally stupid at the worst. Something based on ancient superstition and lack of genuine scientific knowledge by those primitive people who really didn't know anything about anything. And those who believe in it are frequently dismissed as members of the lunatic fringe, along with those who believe in, Bigfoot and UFOs. Of course, the Pentagon and the United States Navy have recently admitted that UFOs do exist. But that's another story. Astrology, of course, gets a very bad name from the misuse of it by questionable persons, such as horoscopes that appear in the tabloid press. Obviously, in many cases, these are just churned out week to week by some journalist with very little knowledge of anything to do with the subject, and some unscrupulous practitioners, along the lines of Madame Zara, who sees all in her crystal ball, or at least she does for suitable payment. There was one such alleged practitioner here in Dublin, and I use the word alleged advisedly, and she had a sign with that very wording on it on her little back alley premises that she used. But one day I passed her place, and there was a note on the door, "Not available due to unforeseen circumstances." Yes, that did strike a note of uncertainty as to her abilities. People like that who irresponsibly cash in on it have given astrology a bad name. Scientists, of course, dismiss it out of hand, but why wouldn't they? If they can't see it, test it in a lab, put it over a Bunsen burner and see if it changes colour, well, they won't accept it. But it isn't something you can take into a lab, put it under a microscope, or examine it with a spectrometer. But you see, astrology and science, well, they can actually be compatible. Yes, they can. There is, to my mind, a scientific basis to astrology. The problem would be finding it, quantifying it, and that's what I want to talk about. The most basic question, of course, is, do people show personality traits or behavior patterns that fit their birth dates at times when a particular constellation was in the ascendant, or in other words, when you could see it? If, say, Aries was the ascendant constellation when you were born, which happens to be my star sign, by the way, well, then you will show certain characteristics associated with Aries. If it was Virgo, then you will have different ones associated with Virgo. Well, yes, that does often seem to be the case. I have known people who fit perfectly their zodiacal sign, right down to the last detail. And a friend of mine, who has practiced astrology for many years and written books on the subject, she did a reading for me, which again was totally accurate. Everything she said was 100% correct. I was quite astonished when I saw it. She has an excellent website, incidentally, which I'd be very happy to give details of to anyone who wants it. I can heartily recommend her from personal experience. But, you see, the question is, was it the constellation of Aries that was responsible in my case? Did the stars comprising that constellation have a direct effect on me? Did they give me those certain characteristics and shape my life in a certain way, enabling my friend to give me a perfectly correct reading? Well, bottom line, no. No, they didn't. The stars have no effect on us whatsoever, which I'll come to in a moment. But something does. So why do people so often have these differing personalities and characteristics associated with the signs of the zodiac, which does seem to be the case? I've obviously seen that myself. What causes it? And if it's not the stars, then what is it? First, we must look at the constellations that make up the signs of the zodiac. Firstly, the constellations as such do not exist. But you say, oh, yes, they do. We can see them. There they are up in the sky. Look, you can see them. No, you see, they simply appear to be up there. As zodiacal signs, they are completely meaningless because they are nothing more than line of sight effects. And over millennia, they change because everything in space is moving. And if you went 10,000 years into the future or the past, those so familiar constellations would look quite different because the stars would have moved. A movement so slow due to their great distance from us that it is completely undetectable. It requires specialist equipment and measurements taken over time to see any indication of movement. But the stars are actually moving very rapidly and, well, like, say, a jet plane seen far in the distance. It may be moving at 500 miles an hour, but it almost seems to be standing still. That is the same with the stars that comprise the constellations. As such, the constellations do not exist. They are not a thing in themselves, because their component stars, as well as moving in various directions at quite high speed, lie at vastly differing distances, making them simply a line of sight effect as we see them, an illusion, if you like. And I said one that changes over time. A good analogy, I suppose, would be that if you look towards a city a very long way off at night, you see a conglomeration of light, all seemingly in the same place. Yet those lights may actually be spread out across many, many square miles. Streetlights that you might see as a seeming bunch of lights altogether, because you are seeing them along their line, well, they're actually separated by considerable distances between them, but at a distance you can't see that. Star distances are measured in what we call light years, which is a measurement of both distance and time, you could say, because it's the distance a photon of light travels in one calendar year. The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, so a light year is a distance of 5.88 trillion miles. Take the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Alpha Ursae Majoris is 123 light-years away from us. Beta Ursae Majoris is 79 light-years away. Gamma and Zeta Ursae Majoris are both at 83 light-years. Xi lies at a very close 29 light-years, while Mu is 230 light-years away. So you see, the stars are completely unrelated. Not only does the constellation of Ursa Major as such not exist as an actual entity, but its component stars are too far away to have any effect on the Earth, and they are not related to one another in any way. Multiply 5.88 trillion miles by 230, and you get the distance of Mu Ursae Majoris. And that's a lot more zeros than the Japanese Air Force. Clearly it has no effect on you and me, but something does. And that is what certainly interests me. What is the elusive something if it's not actually the stars? Is it perhaps the Earth's rotation around the sun we should be looking at, and the Earth's position at various times on that rotation, not the signs of the zodiac? From month to month, the Earth is in the same place in its orbit from year to year, which is why certain constellations in the sky are visible at those times. They simply happen to be visible out in space as the Earth goes by. And whichever one is in the ascendant at any particular time, of course, becomes the zodiacal sign for that time period. While the constellations change their shape and their position in the sky thanks to precession, that takes place, of course, over thousands of years, but any astrological effects produced by the Earth's rotation, well, they would remain constant. The Earth will always be in the same place at any particular time on its orbit in relation to the Sun. Is that where we should be looking for an explanation of aspects of astrology? It might not actually explain all of them, but it would certainly go a long way to explaining many of them. Is it possible that, for whatever reasons, and I have no intention of speculating what such reasons might be, that it is the position of the Earth at particular points along its orbit, not any constellations that happen to coincide with that produces the characteristics associated with astrology? Perhaps connected with other things as well, the various alignments of the planets, for example, since they are close enough to have a direct effect on us. They're interacting gravitational forces, for example, especially the great gas giant Jupiter, which has a massive gravitational effect. And of course our moon influences the tides of the world's oceans. Though, of course, the planets are moving around the sun in their own orbits, their positions vary constantly, so how they would affect the constant position of the Earth at monthly intervals, I really don't know. But the stars have no effect on us. They are far too distant. So, what do seem to be genuine characteristic traits and other things associated with the signs of the zodiac must come from some other cause. That is just basic logic. What that cause may be, of course, I have absolutely no idea. Gravitational interaction related to positioning between the sun, earth, and moon, perhaps? As I said, I have no idea. But as I think I have shown, we may absolve the stars and the non-existent constellations that they seem to form from any involvement in it. That is pure coincidence. My own connections with astronomy actually go back quite a long way. I've owned a number of telescopes from a 3-inch refractor up to a 12-inch reflector. And for many years I wrote articles on various aspects of astronomy for Astronomy and Space magazine, the monthly publication of Astronomy Ireland. I would do a monthly constellation article and articles on aspects of astronomy, such as who actually invented the telescope and things like that. While many astronomers hold up their hands in horror at the very mention, of astrology. Good heavens, astrology? Load of horseshit. Wash your mouth out with carbolic soap at once. I like to keep an open mind about any topic. And if there are observable things related to it, then I look at those and I weigh up the possibilities, as I do with astrology. There are cases where astrology was wrong, yes, but there are many, many cases where it was totally accurate, my own reading, for example. So it cannot simply be dismissed as the ravings of gullible people who probably also believe in the Easter Bunny, the Great Pumpkin, and the Tooth Fairy. There is a genuine case to be made for astrology, though it has nothing to do with the stars as such, despite their seeming association with it, which is simply coincidental. The only star that does have any effect on us, of course, is our own sun. That is simply because it happens to be very close to us, a mere 93 million miles away. That wonderful, brilliant object in the sky, worshipped as a god at one time, and one, of course, can see why. But, sad to say, as stars go, it isn't really very impressive. There are many, many stars, hundreds or even thousands of times larger and more luminous than our sun. There are supergiant stars that they are so large that if they were where our sun is, most, if not all, of our solar system would be inside them. The stars you see at night with the naked eye, they are far more luminous than our own sun. And if you moved our sun out to their distances, well, you'd need a telescope to see it at all. So there we leave the subject of astrology, something that I have seen proof of a number of times, without having the slightest idea of how or why. I really hate to admit that there is something I don't know something about, but sad to say, that is the case. The only thing I do know is that stars have nothing to do with it. The position of the Earth on its orbit at various times when certain star groups just happen to be visible, yes, quite possibly. That would still, of course, technically mean that people born under that sign, though the sign itself would have had nothing to do with it, well, they were still, born under that sign. They could still claim it as their star sign. Perhaps, too, there are other factors involved, though, as I've said, I have no idea what. And, actually, logic does seem to suggest that more than just the position of the Earth must be involved. But anything like that, of course, is pure speculation, unfortunately. So I hope you enjoyed that little chat on the subject of astrology. And for now, I shall say goodbye until next time. Goodbye for now.